Okay, welcome back. So the first thing we want to do in our print method is to ensure that the severity level is within the minimum level that was provided. So let's ensure severity level is at least the minimum. Okay, so if level is less than min level, then we know that we can return 0 and nil. Okay, so great. So let's assume that level is the level of the um, error or logging the thing to be logged is greater than or equal to. Then we can safely go ahead and start dealing with printing it. And so to print or to display it or to write it, that's a better word, to write it, we need to create a struct for holding the log entry data. Okay, and so let's just create that. It's going to be an anonymous struct. Okay, and so this struct will have a field name level of type string, and we're just going to use some struct tags. Okay, JSON level. And then we're going to have, let me copy and paste. After level, we need time. Right, that will be a string again. And we will need another field which will be the actual message. We will need another field which will contain the properties. Alright, remember properties are optional. Okay. And properties will be a map which has key as string and value as string. Properties, and so optional, so omit empty. And finally, we will have a field that will print the stack trace. Okay. So trace, of course, the trace is a string, and so it's optional, so we can have trace. Okay, so it's an anonymous struct, so let's just immediately create the values for that struct. And so we're going to have level will be level dot string. Time will be UTC, so we'll say time dot now dot format. Oh, I missed UTC. So time dot now, let's convert that to UTC dot format, and the format will be time dot RFC 339. Okay, that's our time format. The message will be message, of course, and the properties will be properties. All right, and that takes care of our struct, which will actually contain the entry that we will eventually write out. And so now we have one question to ask, and that question is, should we include the stack trace? Okay, and how do we know? Well, let's just check the level. So if level is greater than or equal to level error, then we want to include the stack trace. Okay, and so that's easy. We're just going to say data dot trace will be assigned debug dot stack. Okay, and this returns a byte slice. So let's just convert it to a string. And so I'm going to use the string function to convert that. All right, great. So we now have our message, our log entry created. So what we want to do now is to convert this log entry, right, which is a struct, into a JSON object. So let's encode the log entry to JSON. And how do we do that? Well, let's create a variable called line. You can call it entry if you wish, and it's a byte slice because remember we're dealing with byte slice. So line error, and then we're going to use the JSON package to do the marshalling, and we're going to pass it in data. All right, and of course Marshall returns a byte slice and error, and that's the reason why line is a byte slice. Now let's check for error. So if error not nil, then let's just return the log entry normally. Okay, so we're just gonna say line will now become a byte slice, which will contain level error. Let's convert that to string, and we will add some message such as unable to Marshall log message. All right. And that message will then be printed for us. Okay. Error. All right, and so that's what we will do if we are unable to convert our message to a JSON object. All right. So, assuming that we did manage to get a JSON object, we want to write that JSON object to wherever it's specified. Okay, so let's prepare to write the log entry. And so now, before I can write to the log, I need to have access to the log whereby it does not get corrupted by other routines, Go routines wanting to write to the same location. And so to be confident that I am the only one writing my entry at any given moment, I'm going to use the lock that we have created for the logger. Right? So I'm going to use mu. mutex. Okay, so I'm going to use the mutex. I'm going to simply say l.mu.lock. So let's lock, and then just to not forget, I'm going to say defer l.mu.unlock. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to return that entry. So I'm going to return, and keep in mind it's locked, and because it's locked I can do my write. So I'm just going to say l.out, right, where to write to, and then I'm going to use the write method, of course, for that writer interface. I'm just going to append a new line after I finish writing, and so I'm going to write out my line. Okay, and that's it. So after I have written this entry, maybe I should just change the name to entry, but I guess I'll leave it as line. All right, let's do it. Let's call it entry. Seems to be a more sensible name. Entry. Okay. So after I write my entry, okay, then I will append a new line. Okay, and that's what I'm going to write out. After I've done that, then before the write function exits, it will release the lock. Okay, all right, that's easy enough. And let's do one more thing. Let's implement another method that implements the IO writer interface. So let's implement the IO.writer interface, and we will need this later on in the next section. So we don't really need it, but I want to show you a case where it comes in handy. So I'm going to implement the write method, because if you recall, if you implement the write method, then it means you implement the IO.writer interface. So message type byte slice, and you're supposed to return n of type int along with an error. Okay, so that means I have implemented the IO writer interface. And so what I'm going to do is simply return. I'm going to call print, and print in this case will just return level error, and then to string we will take message, and finally we will not have any properties, so we'll have nil. Okay, all right, so that's it for the print method. It's quite a lot. Let me just recap. We need to check the level just to make sure it's something we want to log. All right, we want to write. If it's less than, then we know we don't need to do anything. Now if it's at the right level, right, greater than or equal to, then we know we have to log that message. And so we have to create a struct which will have all the fields of that message, and we'll populate that struct with the values for the fields. And then when we're done, of course we need to check to see if we should add this stack trace. But when we're done, we will then write that entry. And before we actually go about writing it, we need to convert it to a JSON format. And so we convert to a JSON format, and then we proceed to write it. And that's it. Okay, let's save that. And so we'll leave it here. In the next video, I will go to the main. Let's go to the main.go file, where we will replace our logger. All right. So I'll see you in that next lesson.